Welcome back, Queen, to another episode of The Creatress of Freedom. I'm so happy you're here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Annie. I am your host. If you are new here, hey, babe, it's so nice to have you here. I love it when we've got some newbies. If you're an OG, welcome back, Queen. I'm so happy that you're here and that you are continuing to take time out of your day to tune in to these beautiful episodes. Today is a really beautiful episode that I want to share with you that is a very personal story. Now, if you've been on this journey with me for a while, you will know that I am very dedicated to the inner work and I am constantly in different types of therapy throughout my life and have been now for quite a period of time. And so recently I have felt this deep call to start working with a new therapist. And I have done that. And I've actually had two sessions. And so I want to share with you a little bit around what was coming up. But I also want to share with you the deeper reasons as to why I decided to get back into therapy, because I go through therapy and then I think that there's a really, really important time where we actually allow ourselves time for integration. And so then I will take a break and then I trust that my body is going to tell me when it is time to go through that next level. And something that I have noticed, and I've talked about this on previous episodes as well, is really being mindful of not being addicted to the healing journey, right? Because sometimes what can happen is it can become this addiction where we are constantly trying to find something instead of allowing time for integration, instead of allowing us the time and space to navigate the challenges that are arising. So I do believe that there is a time and place for therapy. And sometimes, yeah, depending on what you're working through, maybe you do need to be in therapy, but maybe there is other times where perhaps you don't need to be in therapy and you maybe just need to allow yourself some time to integrate. But my personal belief is that every single human being should be in some type of therapy. And after starting to work with my new therapist, OMG, has that just confirmed to me that that's what needs to happen. So let's delve into it today, and I want to share with you some of the personal journey. And you might see yourself in the story. You might be able to recognize and just build some new awareness around things. I know that I've already shared inside my paid community. So that's a perk of being inside my paid community. I share a lot of things with you in real time. Of what I am navigating, what I'm working through, because I think it's really important that us as leaders set that example for our clients. So let me start with this reason as to why I decided to get back into therapy. So I think that it's really important that we have a clear intention on why we are going to therapy, because otherwise it's kind of a bit pointless, right? Like if you're going to go to therapy, the therapist is going to be like, okay, well, like, what do you want to work through? What are you doing? And if you don't know what that is, or you don't have that intention set out, then it's kind of a little bit like you're not getting off to a great start. And maybe you don't know specifically what it is that you want to work through, but you just have this like deep calling inside you that it's time, right? That it's time to start doing some of the deeper inner work. So maybe that's where you're at. And maybe as you hear throughout my story today, you might, it might spark something in you and you're like, actually, yeah, that's the kind of work that I want to start doing. So at the end of last year, I really struggled. Well, if you've listened to my Australian roller coaster journey episode, you will have heard that that was a really deep, transformational experience, that 7 weeks that I was in Australia for. And it kind of threw me, to be honest. I felt like I was at capacity, and it's been a long time that I've felt overwhelmed by life, felt like I was questioning life, felt like I didn't have direction, felt like I didn't know where I wanted to be, felt like I didn't know where I wanted to live. And I just felt like my world just got turned upside down, and I just did not know what was next. And I feel like over the years, I've developed such strong intuition that I can usually find all the answers. And I couldn't do that this time. And there was this deepness inside me that was longing for more. I was over the winter season, which was here in Greece, which was over like the Christmas period, December, January period. I felt like my mental health took a dip, and it's been years since my mental health has taken a dip, and it was really interesting to watch my mental health do that, but with all the tools and all of the skills and all of the newfound awareness that I have now, and to watch myself navigate through it. Like, I could pick up on those signs quite easily. And I just felt like there was this, like, something missing. I have made great financial income. I have really great business. I have a lot of flexibility. I have incredible clients. Like, honestly, like, my clients are just the most beautiful, beautiful women. And I have a really special relationship with every single one of them. I know everything that's going on in their life, and it's just such a special connection. So I have beautiful clients, and I live in Greece, and I just was like, why am I not happy? Why don't I feel this deep fulfillment inside me? Why am I back here again? Because I feel like I went through this when I left my long-term relationship. So back in 2021, I had a huge identity shift. I left my relationship. I also sold the salon, and I started mentoring, and I moved interstate, and I went on this like deep spiritual journey. And that the feeling that I had then was the feeling that I was feeling this time. So I knew that there was some big shit that was about to be uncovered. And I knew that this was like the next level of doing the deeper inner work, because there was something that felt like it was missing. And I was like, I don't know what it is. And there was a big part of me that was also maybe thinking about moving back to Australia. But like, there was something in my core that was like, if you move back to Australia, like, what if you regret that? Like, what if you regret that? And then I started like journaling and reflecting, and I had this like beautiful awakening. This is why I so encourage the power of journaling, because you can find so many patterns when you are consistently journaling about your deep dark feelings, like the feelings that you'd be scared if someone read that journal. Like, that's the kind of feelings I'm talking about. And so I had this like moment where I was like, I don't feel happy. I want to move, I think, back to Australia. But then I was also like, but what if I move back to Australia and then I still don't feel any different? Like, I can't keep moving. And then I started to like reflect, and I was like, oh my goodness, since I left my ex, Troy, my long term relationship, um, the house that I'm in now in Greece in December was the longest time that I've been in a steady environment, that I've been in a stable environment, that I have not had to move. From the age of 18 through to the age of I am right now, I've moved like 30 times. And I think the average adult moves like 11 times in their lifetime. And so when I started to realize this pattern, and I was like, oh my gosh, so like right now here at December, I've got this deep pull that I want to move back to Australia. But then there was also this part of me that was like, hold on, is this another pattern? Is this another pattern where I'm like wanting to pack up and move because things are starting to become settled, because I'm so used to chaos, right? If you're constantly packing up and moving your life every so many months, like, you are used to chaos. And even though you might hate it, it somewhat feels familiar and it somewhat serves you. And so when I picked up this pattern that, oh my gosh, like literally the moment that I'm feeling like I want to move back to Australia is the moment where I've also stayed in a house for the longest period of time since 2021. And so I looked at that and I was like, I'm at a fork in the road here. I can either go back to Australia and potentially keep playing out this scenario that keeps rolling and still not find the fulfillment, and still maybe not maybe still have regrets about packing up and moving from Greece. Or I can choose another path where I stay and maybe I do some deeper inner work as to why can't I find the fulfillment in the mundane? Why can't I find the fulfillment in the air quotation marks, the boring, routinal things that life brings? Why can't I just find satisfaction in those moments? And I was like, I'm not going to play out this pattern again. And I had been feeling the call to do some therapy work. And so I started. I reached out to my girlfriend who is also doing work with her. And I said, hey, I'm ready to start doing some work with your therapist. Can you connect me with her if she's happy to take on new clients? So she did. She connected us with each other. And I said to her that I'm ready to like start doing some work. She's actually based in Costa Rica. So all of our therapy sessions are done virtually, but she does also do some in-person work too. And it has just been like honestly the most profound experience so far to date with working with her. I feel like I've had some incredible mentors and some incredible therapists along my journey, but I feel like I grow rapidly and I find it often a little bit hard to find somebody that is further ahead in the journey than where I'm at, because I feel like I do have so much self-awareness and I feel like I can navigate and work through a lot of my own shit on my own. And so to have someone like be able to call me out on a lot of other things that I can't see, uh, they obviously have to have gone to that depth for themselves in order for that to happen, because you can only meet people to the depth that you've met yourself, right? And so she says to me, can you write me a list? This is how it starts. Can you write me a list of all of the trauma from birth through to your present day? Like, you might not remember all of it, but it'll just give me a good insight on where you're at, what you've worked through. And she's like, I'll be able to kind of see where we can get started. And so I was like, okay, well, this chick by far is like my favorite already. The fact that she wants my trauma list, I'm like, I'm here for this. I'm here for this. But writing out this trauma list it was heavy, but it was also really reassuring, because I felt like I was going to be nurtured and loved and supported in such a beautiful way, navigating and working through all of this. So I literally wrote out a timeline, and she wanted to know my birth story. She wanted to know like any pivotal moments that happened in my life and anything that was trauma based. And I want to chat a little bit about the word trauma, because I feel like it gets a little bit lost sometimes. And some people feel like, oh, well, I don't have any trauma, because my parents didn't divorce, or I didn't have an alcoholic parent, or I didn't go through sexual abuse, or I didn't have a car accident, or I didn't lose a parent at a young age. And we often associate the word trauma with really big, substantial things that have happened in our life. And yeah, that is trauma. But trauma is also just any time in your life where your need was not met. And so it can be emotional trauma, it can be physical trauma. And I think that it's really important that we learn to understand that trauma is not just related to big things, it is related as an overall whole. And uh, any time that you did not have a need met, it creates an imprint on the psyche. So I think it's also really important that we talk about that too. Anyway, so fasting forward to having my first session with her. So she says to me, like, how are you? Like, and she explains to me a little bit about this therapy that she does. And so this therapy work that she does is called DBR, which is called Deep Brain Reorientating. And she also does it with muscle testing, and she tunes into the body virtually and energetically from a distance, and she can like see how the body is reacting. And she essentially does muscle testing while you're on calls, and then also without being on calls, to check into your energetic field. And so she was explaining to me that the biggest reason why every single person should be in therapy is because we all have this illusion of separation from the soul. right? So we believe that us here in this human experience are separate from the soul. And because we have this illusion that there's a separation, this is why so many of us feel like we don't know where we belong, right? We don't know where we fit in. We don't know that we can trust ourselves. We don't know what the next step is for our life. And because of this separation this illusion of separation that we have, we will potentially feel that way forever until we are willing to do the deeper inner work and remove that illusion that we are separate from the soul, because we are not. The soul came with us to this human life experience. And if we can remember where the soul came from, then we can always remember to come back to that space, which is the home base of where we were from. And so as she was going through my trauma list, she was like, you are like a perfect candidate for this type of work. I was like, great, I'm glad to hear. And she said, for a few reasons. The first one is your birth story. She said, we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And the second one is because of my religious undertones growing up in a religious household. She said those two things are huge things because they have imprinted a lot of your childhood, which has created your belief system to who you are today. And so she said, I feel like this is going to be really supportive for you after doing this deeper work. I was like, amazing. I'm so happy to hear this. Anyway, so then we were talking about my birth story, which is so fascinating because I actually didn't know my birth story, right? I had no idea, but there was an opportunity when I was in Australia where I was with my mum. And I just randomly, I don't know why, but I just randomly asked her about my birth story. And I think we were talking about children, and I think she was asking me, do I want to have children? And where am I at with that? And then the conversation kind of got steered into, like what happened with my birth story. So like even just the coincidences and the divine timing of all of that, right? Because I did not know my birth story and I had no idea that I was about to need it a couple of months later to do this deeper inner work with my therapist. And so uh, my birth story, so I was 2 weeks early and I also was a C-section baby. And she said to me, C-section babies usually carry a lot more trauma than a baby that comes through like a vaginal birth canal. And I was like, really? I would have thought that it would have been the opposite. And she's like, no. And she said, this is what a lot of people think. And she said, because the thing is that what you have to remember is that there's a thing called labor, right? And so the baby knows when it is ready to come earthside. And so it starts to prepare itself. It's so used to being in the sack. It's so used to hearing its mother on the other side of the sack. It's been inside the water. But as the labor happens, the baby is preparing itself to come through that channel and through to earthside. And so the baby's doing it in its time. And so as by the time it comes out on the other side, it's like it's ready. It's ready to hear its mother's voice. It's ready to, be on the other side. It's ready to be break free from the sack. She said, however, when you're a C-section baby, it is a complete shock to the baby because the baby is not ready, right? The baby is just chilling and having its best time of its life. And then all of a sudden, there's this massive big cut and then this like arms are coming in and like all of a sudden you're like freaking out and you're like, what's going on? Like, I'm not ready for this yet. And so it actually creates a lot of trauma. And she said to me, the other part that she knows tells signs that my birth story was also traumatic was because I had reflux for very early on. I don't know exactly how long I had it for, but I had it for quite a while, and then I had to be switched over to like a special formula because anytime that my mum would try and feed me, I just would like apparently projectile vomit like a meter in front. It was like huge, and I was like, wow, okay. And she said that's not normal, right? The only reason that you have this reaction is because there's some kind of trauma that is in your body. And I was like, oh my gosh, this like makes so much sense. She said the other aspect as well of why you, have often felt like you don't know where you belong and things like that is that when I was born, I actually was I didn't get like I had a quick nurse apparently with mum, and then that was it. Then I was taken away, and mum didn't actually spend any time with me until the next day. So I didn't have that bonding time either straight away with my mother. So that then also creates this illusion of like, well, where do I belong? Like all of a sudden I've just been taken out of this womb space and brought out into the world, and like no one's around that I know that is supposed to be around. And then the breastfeeding as well. So the breast milk is such sacred milk, right? It's a connection, it's a bond between mother and baby, but there's actually a lot of medicine and a lot of wisdom and a lot of like power that's within that sacred milk. And because I wasn't breastfed as well for the duration of the time that, you know, babies can be breastfed, that also can create some trauma as well. And so I'm just like having this conversation with her, and I'm just like mind blown. I'm like, what the actual fuck? Like, this makes so much sense. And I can't believe that, like, I didn't think of this. Like, it's almost like it makes so much sense that you have no idea how you didn't think of it for yourself beforehand. So I'm just like mind blown by this. And then anyway, we keep chatting, and she says to me, you know, when we experience some type of trauma, we have a contraction that happens on the brain, right? And so what happens is the trauma happens, and the brain takes a snapshot of that memory and it remembers it, and it creates a contraction. And so there's only two ways of the body being able to flow, or the mind being able to flow, and that's either contraction or flow. And if there's a contraction, then it can't flow. And if there is flow, then there's no contraction, which means that you've healed through the trauma. And so as we were like having this conversation about all of these like timestamps essentially that happen on the brain, when the more that we have those, the more we learn, the quicker we learn from a young age how to disassociate. So disassociating is like numbing out. It's like almost like you kind of leave your body. And, you know, I see this a lot in my containers because I can be coaching women, and I can just see the days like just come over their face, and I'm like, she's gone, she's disassociated. And it's a coping mechanism, right? It's not that it's a bad thing, it's just that it's almost like the nervous system is like, I can't cope, I have to tune out. And so if you have ever noticed yourself maybe in mid conversation with someone and you find yourself like drifting off, and maybe you're thinking about something else, or maybe you're just not even thinking about something else, but you know that you're not fully present with this person. And then you kind of come back into the conversation. You're like, fuck, I don't even know what they just said. I was somewhere else. Like, that's a form of disassociation. We all do it. And we would do it more than we realize that we do it, right? But maybe now that I'm mentioning it, maybe you might catch it. But it's just it's a way of the body creating a coping mechanism to protect itself, because it feels overwhelmed and it feels like it can't handle everything that's going on. And so the more trauma that you have and the more of those contractions that you have, the more you disassociate from life, the more you feel like you don't have this fulfillment. And I was like, wow, this is like mind blowing. And so she said to me, based on how you came into this world, and then also based on all of your religious undertones, I would imagine that there is probably quite a lot of contractions on your brain, which is probably why you feel like you're not fully whole, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. I'm like, someone finally gets me. This is amazing. And so we did this really, really powerful exercise. It's almost like like a meditation. She puts you into like a meditation, but it almost feels like a hypnosis, I suppose. And so she says to me, "We're going to go back into your birth and see like what happens for you." And it was the most surreal experience, because she takes me through this process. And now I also understand why I have not worked with this woman until now, because I had needed to do all of that work beforehand around my meditation, around all of my spiritual practices, to be able to get to a state to do this deeper work with her. Because if I didn't do all of those things, I think I would have really struggled to get into the state that I needed to be in order to have the experience that I had. And so she takes me through this guided like meditation journey, and I end up back in my mother's womb. And I'm just chilling and I'm loving life. And it felt like it was happening in real life. Like, I felt like if you're watching the YouTube video on this, I felt like I was like in fetal position, and like my hands were up near my face and my head was like nestled in, and my legs were like curled right up, and I was just chilling, living my best fucking life. And there was no stress, there was nothing. And then the minute that like the knife came into the stomach, I felt myself like contract. And like afterwards, when I was sharing with Carmen, I was like, was I moving in this situation? Like when you were taking me through this? And she's like, no, you were like, you're perfectly still. And I was like, because I felt like it was happening in real life. I felt like I was like, oh, and I felt scared, and I felt like my hands lifted up higher to my eyes to like protect myself and to be like, I don't know what's going on. I'm so confused right now. Like, what's happening? What's happening? And it was this like it felt like it was happening in real time. Anyway, so the cut happens, but I don't get taken out yet. She guides me through and says, like, I just want you just to stay in this space. You're not going to be pulled out yet. Just see what is around and see what might happen. Anyway, so that happens, and then I feel myself like slowly starting to like release my arms, and then I feel myself like starting to rotate around, like as if I'm in the womb space. It was the most surrealist experience. And so I'm rotating, and she's like asking me, like, what's happening? Where are you at now? And I said, I feel like I'm like spinning around. And she's like, okay, that's good. Like, just trust what's going on right now. And so I'm like, okay. And then I see this like, it's like, it looks like a vacuum tube, and it's like a suction. And I'm really curious about this vacuum, and I don't do anything with it, but I want to go down it. And my therapist says to me, Carmen says to me, so what's happening now, Annie? And I was like, oh, I feel like I'm like spinning right around, and like my head is like facing this like a vacuum. And she's like, oh, okay, no worries. She's like, well, what if you went down it and just see where it takes you? And I was like, are you sure that's okay? Like, it's safe to do that? And she's like, yeah, it's safe. You can go there. So I was like, okay. So I go down this like vacuum. I like allow myself to be sucked in. So this is all happening through my mind's eye. And I go down like this tube, and I like go fly through this tube. And then I come out, like pop out the other end, and I'm in this black abyss state. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? But I'm still a baby, right? I'm still this little baby, and it's just like a black abyss. And so Carmen says to me, can you tell me what's happening now, Annie? And I'm like, I feel like I'm just in this room that's like black. I don't know where this is. I don't know what it is, but I feel okay being here. And she's like, okay, no worries. And I said, I feel like I also still have a cord attached to my mum. Like I can't go anywhere. And she's like, okay, that's great. That's really good. She's like, I just want you just to like feel into this space that you're in and just see if you can get a sense of where you are. And so I'm like trying to like feel into this space, and I'm like, where am I? Like, what am I doing? Where am I? And I'm like, nah, I've got nothing. I can't see anything. It's just black. And she said, I want you to not see with your senses of your eyes, and I want you to see if you can feel what this space is. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I'm like trying to like feel around, and it's almost like I see this like over in like a corner, I see like this like little corner that is like peeled up, and it's almost like there's another world underneath this like peeled up. It kind of looked like contact that you put on books when you go to school. That's what it was like. It was like this black contact, and if I just peeled that off, I would see like a completely different world. And so I felt that, and she was like, is there anything that you're noticing? And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on here. And she's like, it's okay. Just trust whatever is coming through. And so I'm like, there's like this, like, I don't know, like over in a corner, there's like this little edge that I like want to pull up. And she's like, all right, well, go and pull it up and see what happens on the other side. So I pull it up, and then I like go underneath and I come out this other side of this other space. And it's like a scene out of the Lorax. Now, I don't know if you've watched the Lorax or not, but it's a kids' movie and it is so fun and it is so bright and it's just like so much joy, right? And so there's like these paths going everywhere, and then there's like these trees with like fairy floss that are branches, and it's just colorful and it's just so much fun. Like that's all I can think of. And so she says to me, what's happening now? And so I explained that to her. I'm like, this sounds crazy. And she's like, it doesn't sound crazy. It's not crazy. And I'm like, okay. And so she's like, does this place feel familiar? And I was like, it feels really fun. Like, I feel like I want to stay here. It feels so good. Anyway, and so then she's like, okay, I want you to just absorb the feeling that this place brings you, and then I want you to like absorb that's the energy into your body, and I want you to shoot it back down the cord and into the womb space. And I was like, okay. So I do that. I like gather all this energy and I like pull it all together, and then I like shoot it down, and it was like me here in this present moment. It was like I had a massive jolt in my body, and I was like, whoa, I feel like I just experienced that massive bit of energy. And she was explaining to me that that is a place where my soul has originated from. And there is parts of the inner work that we're going to do where we will have to go back to that original place so that it feels safe, right? Because there is no separation. So she said, if we're going to talk about your religious background, or if we're going to talk about, the abuse, or if we're going to talk about the, gaslighting in relationships, or, we're going to talk about just different situations with your parents, she said, we can go back to that fun place and make it be fun, right? It doesn't have to be dark, deep, and heavy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And I'm so excited. This is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Anyway, and so she's sharing all of that with me, and she's like, I think, we'll leave it there for today because I feel like that was a lot for you to, absorb and take in. But she said, this is like the start of the journey, and she said, next session, depending on where you're at, we might maybe look at shifting into the disassociation, and see where you're at with that and see if you're able to call back parts of yourself. And so I just was like, what the actual fuck? I got off this call and I like journaled out, I don't know how many pages. And I was like, this is mind blowing. This is mind blowing. Understanding the contractions that happen on our brain and the timestamps that happen, and then understanding like the deep brain reorientating. So that's where she does like deep reorientating, which when I share with you the in another episode about the disassociation work that we did, that will make more sense, because it is just like, this is the work, guys. This is the work. It's not jumping on the calls and, or reading a book. Like, it's the stuff that happens in between. It's the deep work that you get to do on yourself in between the sessions. And so since then, I have been like really reflecting on so much. She was sharing with me as well that a lot of the people that she works with are actually usually are C-section babies. And it's because they don't have the entry into the world technically the way that a baby should have that entry. And so there's a part of them that feels like they don't really know where they belong. And so I'm really excited to do this deeper inner work. And since I've been having these conversations with my clients, they've also gone off and, some of them have children, so they've been able to reflect on their birth stories with their own children, but they've also been able to ask their own mum as well about their birth story, because so much of it makes so much sense, right? And the more that we can learn about ourselves, the more that we can heal, and we can call back all of those parts of self that have been stuck in the timeline or stuck in the psyche somewhere. Because at the end of the day, like, that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to have the ultimate freedom internally and externally. And when we do that, that comes from doing this deeper inner work and calling all parts of self back into this timeline in the present moment, in the here and now. So I am like so excited to work with this incredible woman. She is out of this world, honestly. And like, this is a woman that doesn't have a website. She doesn't have anything. Uh, doesn't have Instagram. It's literally like her medicine is people find her when they're ready for that work. So I'm so grateful that I have been able to find her. And my plan this year is to actually go to Costa Rica and do some deeper work with her. She also works with bufo, which is the frog medicine. And so she combines the work that we're doing now with the bufo. But one thing that she made very clear is that the bufo is to enhance the work that we've already done. We don't use the bufo to find the answers as such. And she was sharing with me how she feels like, sometimes in the spiritual community, some of the plant medicine is being used not in the correct way. So that made me feel really safe as well, because I have obviously done plant medicine before, and it had a very profound experience throughout that. And yeah, I've recorded podcast episodes on it. It was my ayahuasca experience. Also in Costa Rica. How funny that I'm like back in Costa Rica again. But yeah, if you want to go and have a listen to those episodes, by all means, go and have a listen. I've shared very openly about it. But it did take me 12 months to actually talk about it, because it was a lot. It was definitely a lot. And I think I recorded over like 4 episodes. So yeah. But if you are interested in doing this type of deeper work, I would be honored to support you as well, because obviously everything that I learned throughout my teachings and my work obviously gets to be poured into my spaces as well. So if you feel called to do some deeper inner work, we have some new offerings. So check out the show notes or head to my website. And there is things from Reiki sessions, somatic coaching, oracle readings, and we also are currently revamping Evolve as well, which is super, super exciting. And I'm really excited to welcome you into that spiritual healing space as well, if you are feeling the call to go a little bit deeper on that journey. If you would like to hear more about these personal stories that I am navigating or working through, let me know. Come and let me know. Either shoot me an email or come and let me know on social media, because like, I want to make sure that I'm serving you. Yeah. So please let me know what it is that you want to hear. I love sharing the stories. I feel like it really helps me also be able to like heal as well, and helps me process when I share it as well. So I love sharing it with you. If you want to hear about it, come and let me know. If you want to hear what happened in pardon me, my second session with her, then I would be what's going on with my voice? Pardon me. I would be happy to share with you round 2, because round 2 was also really, really profound as well. So if you have not yet left a review, babe, what are you doing? Go and leave me a review. I would love to read your review. And if I can support you in any way, head to the show notes and you will find all of the juicy ways that we can work together. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye for now.